Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is Super Bowl week, so betting go we go. I don't know what I just said, but in this video, we are going to be looking at some of the better value plays for the big lineup for DFS. Usually, I've had these on the screen here split up via the position, but there's really no point in separating them as there is. I think there are some options for like 9-player lineups, but for the most part, most of the betting on DK at least is going to be the captain spot, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other spots to fill out. So it's just one big jumbled mess in terms of value plays. Yeah, that's that as far as the betting goes for DK. Real quick, if you would have interest in doing some prop betting with me live, especially, maybe I'll do a video regardless of whatever kind of feedback I get in the comments. But if you'd be interested, like maybe Friday night, let's say, or let me know if Friday, Saturday, Thursday works best. In doing a live thing, I could put up a premiere or going live and we could do some prop betting. I don't know on what. I haven't really ever done prop bets, but that could be fun enough to do. So let me know about that, and I'll let you know about what we're looking at here in case you haven't seen any of the other videos. Over here, down the middle of this graph, I have my lower expectation, higher expectations. These are projections based on what these players have done throughout the season, and they have been getting weighted with each playoff game that the teams have been played a little bit more heavily towards the recent production. So I've been adjusting basically each stat by about 10%, which probably means about 2 times, makes those individual games about 2 times more important than their season-long stats. The average game's input into the season-long stats. And so what I've done to look at the value of these is taken the DK price, taking the points that I have projected, and then divided that by the DK price, and there we get some point values. I don't have too many disagreements with a lot of what I'm seeing here myself. I do have the players ordered in terms of the average, this most right column, which is the average of the value at the lower projection and the higher projection. If you want to see a little bit, like for instance, I think I prefer to have a little bit better of a ceiling in terms of value than a floor. Of course, a pure point ceiling is always even better. We do also have some injuries to be concerned about here with the wide receivers for Kansas City, which can make lineups, everything very interesting as well. And we will get to some lineups at the end of this video. What the values look like, A.J. Brown at the top of the list has gotten a lot closer in terms of the projections to Devontae Smith throughout these playoffs. And so they're pretty much neck and neck at this point in terms of expectations and in terms of pure value here. I will say in terms of these two, obviously Devontae Smith has been doing well. A.J. Brown is a guy who, before the conference matchup, I expressed some concern for, did invest more heavily in Devonta Smith. Neither the receivers really did a whole lot last week, or 2 weeks ago now. But A.J. Brown, that knee was concerning to me, how he was playing on it and reacting to it after every time he got thrown the ball in the divisional round. And so, that's still a concern. I do have hope and faith that with a 2-week layoff here, A.J. Brown may be able to not walk on his knees at all and come in fresh for the Super Bowl, play through any little nagging pain that he has, but hopefully it won't be too bad. I do know last week, too, he did get, a fair amount of deep targets. It didn't really land on him. Heard some, Philly fans on Twitter, the talking heads for Philadelphia that watch all of their games were saying that A.J. Brown didn't look right. But those were also just kind of, hey, we're trying to just end this game maybe on this 3rd and 2 here. Let's take a surprise shot at A.J. Brown, low percentage throws. So I wasn't overly concerned about that, but I'm cautiously optimistic about A.J. Brown. I'm definitely not fading him at all. I don't really like this kind of the captain betting. I don't do as well on it as I do with the 9-player lineups. Usually the more teams that are involved, the better I tend to do. Let's just move on here to Dallas Goedert in the 3rd spot, right above Travis Kelce. I don't really disagree with this in terms of value. you feel a lot safer with Travis Kelce in terms of the confidence factor in him having a big game. But Dallas Goedert can go toe-to-toe with Travis Kelce, 50, 60% of the time. And so I like that in terms of value for Dallas Goedert this week. He is I think the cheapest big play option that there is in terms of the upside for him. Then we get to the quarterbacks here. Jalen Hurts a little higher than Patrick Mahomes, especially with that injury for Mahomes. I think he's still going to be limited to some extent. And we saw that interesting, I think, a game plan that I really wasn't expecting last week for Mahomes for Kansas City, which was Isaiah Pacheco getting more involved in the passing game than Jerick McKinnon. However, I did express some concerns as far as the type of play that Jerick McKinnon has thrived upon and Patrick Mahomes' limited mobility before last week. Maybe that had something to do with it. Probably not. Which is going to bring us to the wide receivers for Kansas City here. I'm going ahead as if Mecole Hardman is out for this game. Then we have Kadarius Toney, who is questionable, and also Juju up here, who I must have jumped past, is also questionable. And that really ended up helping MVS's output last week, the amount of times he's on the field, targets. MVS scares me as far as the absolute minimum floor that he has, but he also has probably the highest ceiling out of the wide receivers when they're coming into a game at the relative health that they're at. In that sense, I like MVS the best out of these guys, but if we get some good news during the week on Juju, then I don't mind him. That ceiling for him does concern me. I know the projected ceiling doesn't work out because MVS is very inconsistent over the course of the season, which brings his averages down more than Juju. It's similar to the Goddard Travis Kelce thing. You have a little bit more faith in Juju on a game in and game out basis. Then we come to the running backs for Kansas City as well. Jerick McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco, either one of them could do stuff. Neither one of them might not. One of them probably will. You gotta think it's probably going to be Isaiah Pacheco at this point, especially given his involvement in last week's game for them, the previous game that these teams played. And so that's how I feel about that. I would rather be more exposed, despite the value difference and the expectation difference here at the ceiling, to Isaiah Pacheco than Jerick McKinnon. Then we have Miles Sanders here, who concerns me despite some recent success. And I think that's kind of burned me throughout so far, but I've had him in a couple of lineups at least. And so as far as Miles Sanders goes, I feel like he's gotten a little bit lucky with a couple of odd game scripts or game scripts that we're not going to be expecting to be in the Super Bowl for Philadelphia over the last two playoff games. And so will Miles Sanders get all of the work in this game because it will be a closer competitive game? Will Kenneth Gainwell he's been looking really good. He's been more involved, but they have been working with, essentially a lead in both of the previous two games. But maybe he gets more involved if they're trailing or if they're just in a general shootout, because out of the two, Kenny does tend to be the better receiving back by a little ways. Is it just another split? Then does Kenny get the option to get in there for a touchdown? I think Boston Scott's got to be the least one that you're excited about. He's the lowest on the value chain, so I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not going to argue with any of the pricing or the value of these guys. I don't love it. But, they may all suck. I'd say there's a better chance that one of these two does well than them by a little ways, but not by a whole lot. All right, so before we get to the lineups down here, I do want to just cover a few guys who are basically just too inconsistent to project, and that's going to be Jody Fortson, Noah Gray, tight ends for Kansas City, Zach Pascal, Quez Watkins, wide receivers for Philadelphia, and then Sky Moore and Justin Watson, dependent on how beat up that wide receiving core is for Kansas City. Justin Watson, I believe, was not on the active game day roster last week when Sky Moore was. So out of those two, if Mecole Hardman's out, especially, just in general, who I think is going to get on the field more would be Sky Moore at this point in the season. So between Zach Pascal and Quez Watkins, they've both played 17 games this year. Quez Watkins has gotten double the targets, 3 times the touchdown, so he's definitely the one that you would prefer between the two. There is a price difference there, so Zach isn't off of my list totally if smashing him into a lineup makes sense as far as getting him in there, but I don't think he ended up making it into any of my lineups so far. And then we have Jody Fortson and Noah Gray. And Jody Fortson's only played 13 games this season. Noah Gray has been active for all of them. Then there is also the other backup tight end in Blake Bell, who really hasn't been used much at all this season. Between Jody Fortson and Noah Gray, it's close to a deadlock, but Noah Gray has been used more, but he also had more games to be used in. I don't know, there's something about Jody Fortson that I kind of like this week quite a bit. Just the way that he was starting to get used or being used in that offense kind of earlier on in the season to mid-season. I think with the banged up receiving core, one of these guys could definitely get in on a surprise touchdown, slip in underneath Travis Kelce, something like that. And it's one of these two, though. It's not Blake Bell. And there is a price difference here, too. Jody Fortson being like $200 on DK. Noah Gray's like $1,200. So if you really want to go for a cheap long shot, I love Jody Fortson for that, to almost give you a free slot, which may get you 0 points. But it is what it is. Then when we look at the kickers in this game, not too excited about them. Do expect this to be more of an offensive battle. Expect the teams to want touchdowns and quite potentially pass up on a field goal opportunity or two throughout the game. Then when it comes to the defenses, once again, expecting it to be more offensive. So not overly excited about them, but special teams things happen, turnovers happen, and if I had to bet money on which team's going to maybe potentially turn over the ball more and which defense is more prepared to turn that into points, it's going to be Philadelphia that I want defensively as far as a DST in my lineups over Kansas City. Let's start off with 2 lineups that I called the long shots, and the first one that I made started off with Jalen Hurts in at quarterback, followed by Smith, Goddard for receiving options there, then smashed in Travis Kelce there, and got Isaiah Pacheco in there. So really like that lineup, and I was able to make that with Jody Fortson if he plays. So that's where, if Jody Fortson were not to play, what's my other long shot kind of lineup? So went with Quez Watkins to start out with there, and paid up for Mahomes and at quarterback, and was able to get Hurts as well. Really like that. Juju Smith-Schuster had to kind of jump down in pricing because of putting Mahomes here, and because of the extra cost of Quez Watkins compared to like Jody Fortson. So then we've got Juju in here, another guy who maybe he doesn't play, but then Smith Goddard for receiving options. Do like this lineup too, would probably prefer this one. Once again, you just got to keep your eyes on making sure that Jody Fortson makes the game day roster. You can make some pretty decent lineups if you're willing to go spend down low on someone. It does get a lot harder once you try to make something that's a little more even grounded, especially if you aren't going to go with one of the DSTs. I was trying to stick through all the main skill players, and that requires me to put the cheapest option there into this captain spot. So here's 2 even Steven lineups with MVS in there. First one, I have Goddard, Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco, Miles Sanders, Smith in there. Nothing wrong there, but after making that, I was really concerned about not having any kind of quarterback in here. Like, what's the play here? Am I just expecting a bunch of skill players to have really good games? It doesn't seem like a number 1 winning type of lineup. Maybe one that could place if there's, a fair amount, 15% of the field places or something like that. Maybe not the best option, but probably not going to get you the big money. We need a quarterback, I would think, for that. So, MVS. And then, of course, let's match up our captain then with our quarterback. So Patrick Mahomes, able to get A.J. Brown in here. And in order to do this, then we got Dallas Goedert as well, which I like those. I had to play around with this one a lot because it's really, really tight. And the only way to make this work at all with getting a quarterback in is essentially to get the next 2 cheapest, 3 really cheapest guys on the list in McKinnon and Pacheco. Do I love having both of the running backs for Kansas City in there? Definitely not. Is it possible that Kelsey gets kind of shut down in this game, and maybe we do see a lot of screenplays to Pacheco? Maybe he breaks a big one, and maybe McKinnon also gets involved. It's possible. I don't love the even Steven lineups, but it is what it is. Now let's look at the shootouts, where we will find my little gem of a lineup here at the end. Before that, I decided to put the Eagles DST in here to try and just max out on value. I was trying to get 2 quarterbacks in for the most part already here. Couldn't quite do that, but kind of went with a game plan here. So we have Eagles defense, Miles Sanders. Maybe Eagles defense gets turnovers, sets up a Miles Sanders touchdown. Maybe the Eagles get a lead and help because of a turnover or a special teams touchdown, and Miles Sanders gets a little bit of extra running time during the game to help run out the clock or something, has himself a decent yardage game. That kind of thing is, the game flow that I'm thinking, in which case we're going to have to be throwing the ball a lot on the other side of the field, and so that's where we get Patrick Mahomes and, of course, his favorite target in Travis Kelce. Then Goddard and Smith once again to round those out. Going from Smith to A.J. Brown, although not a huge difference in price, really made it hard to get A.J. Brown into a lot of these lineups. Had to force him in, and I like I said, I kind of like him this week, so I definitely wanted to get him in more than just 2 out of the 6 here. I think I tried him every single time first, and then had to finagle him out usually, but this lineup I didn't have to do that, so I actually started this lineup with Jody Fortson, and then I just went and I took the most expensive guys here and wanted to see what would happen when I went to fill out the captain spot. And so got Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, A.J. Brown, all of the best players on the field. Then Jody Fortson, a guy who, like I said, very, very cheap and definitely could get involved in this game for a touchdown. I mean, let's be realistic, it's a touchdown. 3 catches on a really, really good day, and 2 touchdowns in my dreams. And that, I was kind of really pleasantly surprised when I found out that Kenny Gainwell came up here. Initially, I was like, poo, I wish it was somebody better. But thought about it a little bit more, and I like it. And I thought about Gainwell a little bit more, and I like that. If they're passing the ball a lot more, if there's any running back that's going to be able to thrive the most in a pass-heavy game for the Eagles, it should be Kenny Gainwell. So this is the lineup that I ended up putting into big tournament, the KFC lineup tournament, I believe, and we'll see how it does. Thank you very much for stopping on through. I will have a video with the video probably already came out. I don't know what order I'll put these 2 videos out, covering the game and some of my bets as far as the game, the Vegas lines go this coming up Sunday. So enjoy the Super Bowl, everybody. Frickin' just have a good time, whether you do well in betting or not. So peace out.